And welcome back to the Champions Club. And here we see right in front of us now the heat map of Vitinha and João Neves. You talk about two of the top talented midfielders in world football who can do it all. Vitinha can control the flow of the game, can drop into that defensive role, and then you can see that he's more central because he was vital today for Paris Saint-Germain in their approach of dropping into that centre-back role there. João Neves was the one who put out the fire. He was the pit bull, he was the terror. He was going everywhere around that pitch there to fill in the gaps, to help out, and that is what you call a well-balanced pair of a midfield. As we go back to the tactics board, Grella, and back to being in the dressing room and listening to managers and coaches, watching those two midfielders play is fascinating to play. You know, you talk about rotation. Rotation is a word that's used, but to get players to understand how it works, that's footballers of the highest level. Now, I don't want to overcomplicate with the views, but I'll just do a very simple one there. This was what was happening in the game today. You talk about rotation, I'll just do a simple arrow here, an arrow here, and then an arrow here, which would explain the situation. This was happening in the game. You've got Zia Emery playing at right back. At times, he would go up into this spot here. Then Marquinhos would come out there. Then obviously you'd have the other centre-back would come across there. But what would happen is, at times, you'd have João Neves would also drop into this situation. So it's a bit of a triangle, but it's a rotation in how it works, where, yes, Zia Emery will come out here, he'll come up here, Marquinhos will go out here, and then what will happen is João Neves will come into there, and he would fill in as another centre-back. And it's rotation from players at the highest level to see and understand when they need to fill in gaps and spots for one another. And what happened in the game, which we said most of the time, you talk about Luis Diaz being one of the top players out there, because Marquinhos would go out there, he would instantly engage with Luis Diaz because he's out there. Zion would be up here, and then you'd have Vitinha come into that hole there to fill in the gaps for the centre-back that's out of position.
Yeah, let me borrow that marker for a second.
I'll put my shirt.
I'm going to just build on Nigel's point here about rotation. If you see when he starts the play, it's 4-3-3, and then when you see when he ends the play after all the arrows, it's still 4-3-3. The reason why it's important is because the rotations are happening, but they have pretty much the same shape. And what that does is it makes it difficult for Bayern Munich, for the players, to lock into guys because you can't chase. Let's say if Vitinha was dropping in here, right, and Emery was coming in there. They were so locked in guys, they can't chase him into there. But they were so reluctant to pass guys on as well. So that the rotation really put Bayern in a spin. And I just want to show you two things here. PSG, when they didn't have the when in the first leg, they went and pressed this football like this, right, up the pitch. They went and pressed this football, and the back line was here, right? And so when we saw 5-4, this is why we saw 5-4, because this space here in the opponent's half, and you're able to play a little combination and get guys running. But when they were winning the game, and they scored early on in this one, and we're going to talk about that in a second, when they were winning the game, this is what we saw. And note, please, I hope you're watching, the managers that don't want to switch because they're stubborn. When it comes time to get to a Champions League final, this is what we saw. We saw this. We saw this from PSG. This is a PSG that would score 5 goals in the first leg. This is the PSG that have the best front three in football. This is a PSG that love attacking. We know them through that ability. And the likes of Kvaratskhelia, Due were asked to do this sort of a role and responsibility playing in this shell. And a lot of tackles that were celebrating. And even at times when Bayern Munich got into these spots here, they would come down and help.
Double up.
They would come up down and help. And it would even at times look like this. It would look like that. It would look like 5-4-1, this compact. And you could imagine, as much as we're on top of Bayern Munich because we didn't get the performance we expected from them, you have to be so perfect to break this down. Because they've got so many guys across, they can shift, they can be happy with it at all times. And now, when PSG had the football, right, like this, I just want to show you how the goal came about and the problems that it started for Bayern. When Bayern went to go press the football, right, and this is company saying, oh, we want to see chaos, right? We're going to be ready for the chaos. And we'll focus mainly on the back four of Bayern here, right? And so these guys are irrelevant. Let's just focus on the back four. Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Due, right? And the midfield coming down to get the football. So what happened was when Bayern pressed the football, right, they're locking in on guys. And what happens is when Dembele is here. He's not a true striker, right? We know that. He can play on the wings, and he loves to come in here. So when he comes in here, the two center backs have nothing to do. And they were instructed to go and follow him in there. So Upamecano would follow him wherever he would go, sometimes this deep, right? And even if he was here, he would come and follow him. Now what happens is, and we're just going to add the two center midfielders of Bayern Munich who had to stay tight to these guys, right? They're tight here because they're pressing the football. What happens is this gap has to be accounted for. And when you leave Kvaratskhelia 1v1 with Lime or Stanisic, which was in the first leg, he's in danger here against one of the best wingers in the game. And if you see in the first leg, we say Nigel says he's got to time this run better, right? He tries to get close, and boom, he beats him behind. If he's too far, then he collects the football and he runs at him full speed with nobody behind. In this situation, if you don't go man-to-man, what usually happens is this striker comes down into here and you pass him on to the center midfielder. So the midfielder can pick him up.
Drop off in there.
But the problem is they wanted to play and press the football and go for it. So what happens is, as this center back vacates this spot, and now you've got this 1v1 situation, there is no center midfielder to go and help him, and there's this other center back is too far away to help him. And he is on an island alone, and that's what happened a lot for PSG. It happened on the goal today that they scored, and it happened 3 or 4 times in the first leg.